So what is the inner child? The inner child is basically the consciousness of the younger self, the consciousness of you when you were younger. Now, this consciousness holds within itself all of the information you had when you were young. So when we say young, it could be really anywhere from birth or even beyond birth to teenage years, more or less, right? But we see that most of the things that we need to deal with come in before the age of 10. So imagine that everything you went through since you were born until today is kind of like it's recorded in the consciousness realm, energetically recorded, and it never goes away. It exists forever, which means that you can connect to it, and in different ways, obviously, but you can connect with it, understand it better, remove things, heal things, embrace things, and then you will start to see the effect of that in your life. What does the inner child carry, or what are the things that the inner child carry that kind of create boundaries in our life, or stop us from being ourselves, or stop us from embracing the powers and the strengths that we have? It is everything that when you were a child, everything that you've been denied, everything you were fearful of, everything you felt ashamed of, everything you've been bullied for, everything you craved and you never got, right? All of these emotions and feelings stay. In psychology, they say that everything you are today is merely a collection of decisions that you took as a child to protect yourself. So imagine every reaction you did as a child together composes you today, what you call your personality, right? But there is another you in the background that is free from all of these decisions. Imagine the world from a child's view. Imagine when you were a child, how did you see your world? The world in a child view is so small, is so small, even though that we say, okay, they're small, so the world is vast, but no. They're small because everything is important. And what's in their awareness right now is so important. So anything that goes against their expectation or hinders their safety in a little bit, which you as an adult today could see it as something silly or random, or why should I feel that way about that? It's nothing. But we've got to understand from the point of view of a child, nothing is silly and everything is super important. So imagine this child have been exposed to so many situations and people and society and friends and parents and all of that, and sometimes step-parents and all of these different influences. And from this perspective, from this life perspective and life view, this child have made decisions about itself. For example, one time this child was angry and it tried to express its anger and it came out in a big fit, and the parent said, you shouldn't throw a fit. You shouldn't be that angry. I am not here, I am not ready to listen to you now, or I will ignore your anger completely. What does this child understand? Understand that, oh, I have expressed a strong emotion, or I have expressed an emotion and it wasn't received well, or it was ignored, or I was hurt because this happened, therefore I am not going to express myself anymore. So then maybe it decided that expression is unsafe, therefore I should bottle my emotions and never talk about them. Does it sound familiar? Isn't that most people, right? That we choose to not talk about our emotions because it's not safe. And then it becomes a part of your personality. And we just say, oh, I'm an introvert. Oh, I don't talk to people. Oh, it's just me. I don't talk about my emotions. But does it mean that these emotions don't exist? No. But what I'm trying to convey is that then we start living in a constant reaction to something that happened in your childhood. It becomes part of who you are. But that part is merely a reaction to something that happened to your past, and you've took it on as your own and as part of yourself. Another example would be, for example, let's talk about boys and girls, since we have boys and girls and beautiful men and women in our session today. Boys are told not to cry. Boys are told they have to be tough. They have to not express their emotions. And what did that do? The majority of men in the Arab world and all of the world are disconnected from their emotions. And emotions is this one thing that makes us human, right? Without emotions, we become robots. And when we can't express our emotions and we cannot live by our emotions, we lose our humanity to a certain extent, right? On the other perspective, girls are told to be polite, to always be soft, to always be feminine. Wow, and wow, Arabic and English and Arabic sometimes mixed together. So they're told to be that. What happens here? Happens that girls grow up to be polite when they're violated, to sometimes not even perceive violence as violence, because they're told that it's unsafe for you to go against somebody or break a rule, for example. And there are endless examples, but these are a few to kind of get you into the picture and have a glimpse of what are we going to talk about today in depth. Now, as we said, the inner child consciousness is an energy that exists with you. But how does this energy manifest itself into your life? How do you know that this thing comes from the inner child? I will say a few things that are general, but most of the time, it's not necessarily that these things always come from the inner child, but most probably, most of the time, they have roots in the inner child consciousness. One, neediness and attachment. The feeling that you need people all the time. The phenomena of getting attached too quickly and being so hurt and broken if that person or thing disappears from your life comes from an inner child trauma. And when I say an inner child trauma, remember the child perspective of the world. It could be a very simple situation that causes an increased emotion in the child. It becomes traumatic that you, as a person right now, because it's so simple and silly to you, you might not even remember it. Another thing which is similar to what Carla spoke about, which is anger and throwing a fit when the anger and the situation are not proportional. You have a simple situation and a rage of anger, right? This situation tells you, oh, this is bottled emotions from the past that haven't been expressed. So every time there is a window, they come up and try to express themselves. The other thing can be unexplained fears and phobias. Could be fears and phobias like from heights or certain animals or insects or whatever, but it could also be, for example, fear of expression or fear of talking in a group of more than 2 or 3 people. It could be a fear of relationships. It could be a fear of being vulnerable. It could be a fear of commitment. All of these things come from the past, from the childhood. Now, imagine, this is the emotions, or this is how the inner child surfaces. But I will explain to you what happens in the background so you will never forget it. So basically, we're saying there is the adult you and there's the child you coexisting always. Imagine when you live your life, it's like you are always driving a car. Okay? You as an adult should be holding the steering wheel and should be driving your life. What happens is the inner child should be in the back seat, right? What happens is that every time there is an opportunity, the inner child will jump into the steering wheel and take over your life. And it becomes problematic is that when the inner child starts to take life-changing decisions and important decisions for you while they're driving your life. As we said, the inner child consciousness and the inner child traumas are a reaction to a specific thing. But this reaction is like it's on loop. So when the inner child jumps into the driving seat and starts to drive your life for you, it's driving it from a reaction from the past. It's driving it while it's in the loop. It cannot see the situation for what it is. It cannot identify the situation for what it is because it's seeing it through the lens and the perspective of a little child. Now this becomes dangerous because it breaks up families, it breaks up marriages and relationships. You lose opportunities in career. It does so much damage because this child is unhealed or unintegrated. I will come back to this word.
Okay. I'll just jump in. Obviously, a lot of what you said hits home. We've discussed most of it already, but it's never enough. I want to emphasize on triggers because for me, there's certain things that if someone does, like I said, it doesn't have to be magnified. It's just something someone presses, when we say someone presses the right button. For me, I feel like that means that someone said something that has triggered my younger self once upon a time. I think I have a huge issue with someone just implying that I'm lying. And I don't know why. It's very deep rooted. And now, like, that's a trigger for me. And I think at some point in my childhood, I had said something. Actually, I remember a specific story where I was accused of something and punished for it, but it wasn't the truth. It was a lie that someone made up, but I paid the price for it. And I think this is why, and I'm realizing literally this in this moment as I speak of it, I think that's why now when someone does it, I lose my like completely.
Yes, it's amazing. Our life is an amazing teacher within itself. It's like a mirror. If you are triggered in any way, I really highly encourage you to pause and to try to look at your childhood and your past and to identify where have you had this reaction the very first time and why. We'll talk a little bit deeper now about the healing process or the work of the inner child and what does that mean. But before I get there, I want to tell you a little bit about what happens when you start to work with the inner child. What are the benefits? How does it change your life? The most obvious answer, carrying on from the example that I just spoke about, is that the child will stop jumping into the driving seat and taking over your life. Most importantly is that when you start to connect with your inner child and understand your inner child, you understand your adult self better. You understand your life better. You understand your behavior better. And that gives you a deeper connection with yourself. that is, I think, the most valuable thing in one's life is their own connection with themselves. The other advantage is that you close up wounds. If the inner child is hurting, these are open wounds that are bleeding and the blood is seeping into your life, right? And this is why we keep living in a constant reaction mode. But once we work with the inner child, we mend these wounds. And when we mend these wounds, we heal them, which means healing doesn't mean that the wound is gone or whatever happened never happened, but it means that this wound no longer controls us, no longer have an influence on us. But it is still there. However, we go and live past the wound. The other thing is we also get past our fears and obstacles. So the inner child, in a way, holds you back in so many different ways, right? But when you work with your inner child, you will see yourself unfolding and emerging to the real you, out of the reaction mode from the past. And that you will start to change, and therefore your life will change. Another perspective also, because the inner child has a child view, the more you tap into the inner child and integrate your inner child, the more you go back to this childlike view, which brings you back to your innate curiosity, to your playfulness, to the simplicity of looking at life, to the simplicity of being joyful for small reasons, for playing, and most importantly, remembering how to be in the moment like children. I think it's fascinating and beautiful. How do we see children just, playing or whatever it is that they're doing? They don't think about the coming next minute or hour. They don't think about tomorrow. They're just here. And that's a great, 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 great way to live life. And the more you integrate with your inner child, the more you can do this easily. Now, a lot of you probably think, and some are asking on the chat, what is inner child healing or inner child work? Like, what does it consist of and how do you do it? So basically, there are different schools and approaches and modalities for inner child healing, and it can be also met in through different modalities. For example, hypnosis, theta healing, access bars, or general holistic coaching, But I think there are steps that almost every modality goes through it. And these steps, I'm going to talk to you about it. And these are things that you can begin to do by yourself. And if you need deeper work, of course, which most of us need, then you can seek help from a professional. So the first step for you is to have an awareness about your inner child's voice. And I will give you a tip. If you go back in your memory, how many times have you had a reaction or said something or had a feeling that you thought to yourself, why am I saying this? Or why do I have this feeling? It's silly. It's silly for me to have this emotion towards this silly situation that happened. Or you've said something and then when you're done, you ask yourself, how did I say this? This didn't sound like me. Or I don't know where that came from. Or I don't know what possessed me. All of these situations, this is how it feels when the inner child jumps into the driving seat. So what does awareness do? In the beginning, or the first step, we say, when you feel that your inner child is in the driving seat, what you want to do is say, okay, I see you, but I am sorry, this is not your place. And literally, I feel like I am putting my inner child in the back seat, and I am taking over and taking a breath and rethinking the situation and making decisions. It is hard in the beginning, but the more you practice, at least just observing and noticing when it's you and when it's not you. When it's the wiser aspect of you, when it's the wiser aspect of you, when is the adult you is driving, or when it's the inner child jumping into the driver's seat. The second phase would be connection, establishing a connection. And this can vary in depth. It could be a very simple tapping into the consciousness and connection, or it could be very deep, where you can go in there and really dissolve and break down things with the inner child. So a very simple one would be to set an intention to make a connection, right? And here we will do a small exercise together. I will give you a few seconds to grab a pencil and a paper really quickly. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. What I want you to do is to first take a deep breath and look down at yourself. When we're looking down, when our eyes are down, we are ready to make a connection with ourselves. Okay? And then as you look down to yourself, just set your intention that I want to connect with my inner child now. Just like that. Very nice. Now, I want you to hold the pencil with your opposite hand, your non-dominant hand. If you're left-handed, with the right, if you're right-handed, with the left. And now let's go through these questions together and just write the first thing that comes to your mind, talking to your inner child. What are you afraid of? Just keep writing, even if it makes no sense to you. Don't worry about your handwriting, how it looks, is the spelling correct? Just write what comes across. Next question, what do you need? Or what are you craving? Next question, what makes you happy? Okay. Now take a deep breath and read what you've written. And if you want to share, we can share. Carla, do you want to share what came up?
It's interesting. I did make a spelling mistake, and it, like, you know what I mean? It felt like my hand just took a mind of its own, kind of. But anyway, so the first question was, what are you afraid of?
Yes.
And I wrote not being loved. So I don't know if you want to put your hands down, and I don't know if someone else wrote the same thing.
Put your hands down. So if you want to share, you can just raise your hand again. We'll open the mic.
Yeah. If you want to relate on that.
No, comment.
We have a hand up. What was the? Oh yeah, I think Hadeel will go into why writing with the opposite hand is important. So for the second question, Hadeel, what was it? What do you?
Craving, or what do you need?
So I put security, and then I put understanding, and I wrote the S the other way around, which was very strange for me.
Interesting. And then the last question was, what makes you happy?
Hugs and attention, apparently.
Nice. So basically, this is what your inner child needed the most of all of these answers.
So one of the comments was writing with my opposite hand was odd. And I think I asked you the same thing yesterday.
So
Okay.
basically, when you write with your opposite hand, you have more access to your subconscious. And this is where your inner child lives. When you write with your right hand, this is how you're programmed. So your brain knows, oh, I'm going to write now. So I'm going to write correctly. I'm going to write what makes sense. I'm going to write something nice. I'm going to write what I want to be on the paper. So these are all programmed in you. And when you hold the pen, that what you're going to do automatically without thinking. But the minute you change hands and you write with an opposite hand, the program it glitches. It's like, I don't know what to do now. So you're writing honestly, truthfully. It's almost a small glimpse and a gateway to your subconscious. So it is familiar because the inner child is driving. It is familiar because the inner child has already brought this emotion forward in your life. It is already manifested. Yes, it is painful. It is painful, of course, because we are in that loop reaction mode from the past and the wound is still open. Now, what do we do with that and how do we move from here? The answer is understanding, is to dig deeper. This is your opportunity to know everything about yourself. To take one of these answers and ask why, and answer it and ask why again, and ask why again, and ask why again, until you go back to the situation, until you go back to what had happened, and tap into how did you feel as a child, not how you're feeling now. How did you feel back then? And from there, you begin to understand, Yani, from there, if you bring that into your awareness also, see the levels kind of build up. If you bring that into your awareness, your triggers, you will start to recognize them. And when you start to recognize your triggers, because you know what you've already been through, here you have a choice. Here lays all of your power. If you fall asleep and let the inner child take over, you will go back to the loop mode and nothing will happen. But if you recognize your trigger and you sit back and you say, I know that this is going to trigger me. Here I have a choice to either react the same way or step back and choose to react differently. And that within itself is healing. That within itself start to manifest differently inside of yourself and therefore reflecting outwards into your life. The step after that, which is basically integration, which is integrating the inner child, embracing the inner child, letting know that the inner child is important, that voice in your head, that feeling in your heart, it is important, it is noticed, and it is heard. The issue here, we'll go back to the example of driving the car. The inner child keeps jumping in the driving seat because it doesn't have anywhere else to go. And it forces itself forth because no one else is giving it space. So it has to dig its space, its own space. And it comes and it expresses itself in bursts. But when you integrate with the inner child and you say, I see you and I hear you, and when it's appropriate for me, I will give you the space to express yourself. I will give you the space to say what you want to say, and I will listen to you. It's almost like you're going to start to build a relationship between you and you, the bigger you and the smaller you. The more you give a safe space for your inner child to be in full expression and to be understood and embraced, the less it will jump into the driving seat, the less you'll be triggered. Now, working through that, this is like the general skeleton. Working through that, or the conclusion of integration, depends on each and every inner child, because we all have different traumas. We all have different energies of the inner child, the different situations we've been into. Some children, inner children, need to be embraced and acknowledged. Other one needs to be set free. Other ones need to be heard. Other ones need to cry. As simple as that. So it can be different depending on the inner child and what it needs. Someone is asking, what if I can't cry? If this is something that your inner child is asking for and it needs to cry, the one who's stopping you, is the adult you. The adult you doesn't want to cry. The inner child wants to cry. So there is an art and there is a practice to keep connecting with your inner child, to be able to hold that space, to allow the inner child to cry through you. And follow these simple steps. Be aware of your inner child. Connect with your inner child as many times as possible. You can do the writing exercise again and again. You can write pages and pages with your non-dominant hand and then go back and read them and try to understand your inner child. Ask any questions that come to your mind. And then you integrate your inner child by trying to change the way you behave, but also acknowledging its existence and giving the inner child what it didn't receive when it was younger, when you were younger. For example, if it is missing anything, or maybe the situation is different.
How can I work on this more deeply for the future and get it sorted?
Okay, as we said, follow these 3 steps that we're talking about, and this would be a great beginning, but I highly encourage you to seek someone to help you out, because I'll tell you why. The inner child work is not difficult, but most of the time it's scary. Most of the time, our egos and our adult selves and our conscious minds wants to protect us from going back there, so it blocks us. So as I said, if you would like to work with me, I'm happy to help you, and everybody who are interested in actually going through this journey through different methods. Other methods that you can seek is breath work, hypnosis, access bars, theta healing is great also for inner child work. So you can explore what fits you best. But in general, to start to build, let's all start there. Start to build the healthy relationship with your inner child. Be aware of its existence. Create a safe space for it to be what it is. Try to understand it by this little exercise that we did together. Notice your triggers. Your triggers are speaking directly to your inner child. If the situation that you are in or the reaction that you have is not proportional with the event, something doesn't add up. This is you're transferring an emotion from your past and bringing it to the present.
How do you distinguish between the implications or influences of your inner child and your current traits, or simply being who you are? the lines can get blurred at times, and especially in an intimate relationship setting. Wow. Yes.
As we said in the beginning, in psychology, um, they say, and I truly believe that all of your personality traits are nothing but a collection of decisions you made as a child to protect yourself. So almost everything you are today is a buildup from your childhood. So mostly the influence of the inner child is massive. Mostly, this is why when you will notice this, when you become more aware of your own inner child, and then you go out in the world and you start to interact with people, you will see that the majority of people are nothing but children leading an adult life. Observe. You will see that for yourself. And again, the ego, our egos, is so powerful that it doesn't want you to go in the past. So when you say, this is from the inner child, the first thing that will come and say, nah, that's just you. Don't go there. It's not safe. Stay here where it's nice and cozy. But we need to do the work.
You had also touched on those moments where you're like, did I just say that? Where did that come from?
Yes. So we were saying that sometimes it comes, an inner child expresses itself in situations that we all go through. When you, for example, say, when you're angry and you say things and you say, oh my God, I can't believe I said that, didn't sound like me, or what possessed me, or who's this talking, or you have a fit, or you get too attached too quickly to something and it doesn't make sense, it's unproportional. It's probably something from your inner child.
And I love the other side of it. What you said is sometimes you can tap into your inner child to source power, because there are situations where you want to say something and you hold back because of worried about judgment, or your ego kicks in. But then sometimes there are things you really need to say. And I think if you can learn how to access that inner child when necessary, that sort of will give you that courage, like children have naturally, to say and speak your mind.
Basically, yes. If allowing, thank you, Carla, for saying that. That reminds me of a very powerful exercise. If possible, if you remember a specific trauma or something that really bothered you, I'm gonna just bring a random example so everybody can relate. For example, let's say a child through his childhood, had a distant mother. Wasn't very emotional, didn't say I love you, didn't hug them enough, didn't say all of these lovely things children like to hear and feel. And then you grew up and now you have a great relationship with your mother, your friends, but something isn't right. There is a wound that when you remember your childhood, you always say, I wish she was like this, or I didn't get that as a child. Even if your relationship with your mother is not great right now, also, most importantly, this is the reason. If you can reach out to the person involved in your childhood trauma and have a heart-to-heart conversation, and in that conversation allow your inner child to speak through you, that is tremendously healing, and it is by far the fastest way to integrate your inner child, because you are directly going back to the same scenario and giving it exactly what it craved or what it needed. So if it's possible, I encourage you all to do this. I know it's uncomfortable and scary, but trust me, it goes a long way and you will thank yourself for being brave and for actually doing that. What about if the caregiver refuses to have the conversation? Great question. Do your best, and if not, write a letter, record a voice note, express it, allow it to come out of your system, even if they don't receive it. That will also help you.
I don't know if this also touches on the private question that was asked, which is, what if the person is no longer with us?
If the person no longer with us, imagine the person in front of you and have the conversation anyways.
Okay, as Hadeel said, we'll be back for some more questions, which I hope you will ask freely. This is a safe, judgment-free space for all of us. What I want to share with you is Brave Little Girl with the lyrics. I haven't released it yet, so this is the first time you'll hear the full song. But I think it might help you understand my inner child healing journey a bit better.
Yes.
Oh, wait for that girl that you couldn't protect, armed with anger as a weapon to defend. So small in a world where giants roam, to claim their status as if it were thrones. Oh, I weep for the girl who didn't know why Daddy left and Mom cried at night. In a small special place she was meant to go home, surrounded with people, still felt so alone. Oh, weep for the little girl you never heard cry, who dreams of the day when she will.
It's beautiful.
I had a inner child healing session, and after that I was feeling so much, and I don't know if you noticed, like I think I was crying throughout the song, but it just, like I felt this need to just hold my inner child and just let it know that I get it, like that I get it, you know? And this wasn't supposed to be a song, it was a message, but I think it moved, the vulnerability aspect of it moved people, and I decided it should be out there, and hoping others will do the same, even privately, just to go back and just truly understand what their inner child went through and heal from there. Wow, thanks for all the beautiful messages. Bless you all. We're all, like Hadeel said, we're all inner children, you know, we're all children inside, living in adult vessels or cars or...
Children tremendously failing in adulting.
So to go back to something you said that was very important and very hard for me to do is I realized that I had been, through inner child healing, I realized that I had been carrying... Oops. Thanks, Hadeel.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, no, I was saying, one thing you said, it was about confronting our families or people who were involved or had a big influence on our childhood. And for me, through an inner child healing session, I realized that I was carrying a memory that had triggered a lot of fear of abandonment for me. And it's interesting because throughout my life, I thought it was coming from the absent parent. And then when I had that, I realized a big part of it is coming from the non-absent parent, the parent who was very much involved. And I went to her and I confronted her. And sorry, I get emotional.
Really? That is very brave of you, Carla, because it is hard. As I said, the inner child work is hard. We even call it shadow work because it's so trapped in the background. And in that trap, there's so many wounds and so much pain that our adult selves and egos constantly want to protect us from going there. But we have to go there. Everything changes when we go there. And I have seen, being Carla's friend and in her life and talking to her every day, I have seen the
Past your
progress.
bedtime as well.
I have witnessed how she evolved. You came a long way, babe. You came a long way.
Alhamdulillah. But anyway, yeah, imagine at 36, you're scared to confront your mother. And it was amazing because she corrected it. She said, no, I was there for this. This and that happened. And as kids, we create memories that are false sometimes.
Not only that, we create stories that didn't happen and we believe them.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And then not only do we believe them, we carry them into our adult life. And they eat us alive and they affect our behavior. So also bear that in mind. There's a lot that we carry that's probably even not accurate, that you've just been carrying around this whole time, you know, and
it's heavy and it blurs your perception, and when you dig deeper, then
yeah, and just changing this, even though it was just finding this out felt like something went back, rewired, and you know that caught up with me, and my fear of abandonment, obviously I'm still working on it, but somehow it became so much lighter just knowing this piece of information.
I had a client who, in an inner child journey that we did together, she had a fear of abandonment, and the story that came up, it was so silly that you would never think that it would create such a wound. It was a story of her mother saying to her when she was a child, if you don't clean up your room, you are not going out with me. I'm going to leave you here. As simple as this. And she just left. Well, the child wasn't alone, but that feeling of I didn't do something, therefore I was abandoned, carried on and integrated itself into her childhood, into her adulthood, even though the situation was actually simple and the mother wasn't cruel. She had the best of intention and she was trying to teach her daughter something, but this is not how the child sees the world.
Wow, that's intense. We have a question saying, what if you block the memories and you don't know what actually happened?
Yes, absolutely. Not always. Sometimes you know exactly what happened, but you don't allow yourself to go back there and feel your feelings. Feeling your feelings is a big part of it. And one reason why it's difficult, but it is doable. And as we said, you just have to start by slowly expanding and building up your awareness.
And I think for me, what helped me is because I did it with someone who's a professional. They also knew how to probe that within me. They knew how to ask what questions to ask to get me to that point. So I guess that's another advantage that has, at least for me, helped me tap in deeper. Because even with someone professional, you become a little child. Like she would say, and what else? And the resistance, the fear of unleashing emotion, like that's something I couldn't do alone. I couldn't, personally.
Yeah. Having help, especially holistically, is a great advantage. And you get to go through this journey in a healthy way, in a safe way, let's say. So if you would like to delve into an inner child healing journey with me, I am more than happy to help you, go onto the website and read more about what do I do, and just click request a booking, and I'll get back to you. Also, if you would like to book a consultation that has nothing to do with inner child but something different, also I am always here and my door is open, and I'll be happy to welcome you at any time.
Okay, so I wanted to comment about something you said at the beginning of the session, that you said that people can, like people with inner child trauma can attach to other people really quick. I think, like, personally, this happens to me a lot. Anyone who shows basic like human respect to me, I consider that he did a major thing in my life, like, because I'm sorry.
It's okay. Carry
Yeah,
on.
so growing up, like especially in a Middle Eastern household, it's hard to express feelings. It's hard to talk to other people about what you feel. If you tell a Middle Eastern parent, especially a Muslim one, I feel depressed or I feel sad, they'll directly go to, you are not praying, you are not close to God. And I think this is a part of it, but it's not the full story. And personally, I grew up with no friends, or toxic people in my life, which try to ruin my childhood. So the first thing that happens whenever I see someone being friendly to me is I'll just talk my heart out, just out of nowhere. Like, I'll be like, okay, you showed me
Kindness.
what exactly, which is something that it's not, it's supposed to be the normal, but honestly, I don't know. I'm not used to that, I guess. And I
Well,
sometimes feel,
if you are ready to be past this, to grow past this, if you are ready, I encourage you to start your inner child connection. Yani, for example, this child craved kindness and acknowledgement, right? And you're an adult now, and in your logical mind, you realize that I do not owe a lot to everybody who shows me a little bit of kindness, right? You don't owe them anything. You know this as an adult. So your reaction comes from your inner child, right?
yeah.
That you start to get too attached to them because they gave you something that you're craving. What you want to do is be aware of that. Just be aware of that and choose differently. The minute you're aware that this behavior is coming from your inner child, then you have a choice. The minute you're aware, it's like when the inner child is doing something and the mother sees them and then they stop. This is what happens. When you see the inner child and you're aware that this is the inner child, it will slowly go back to the back seat. And then here you have a choice. Do you choose to continue to react the same way the inner child wants you to, or you want to be logical and behave in a way that serves you? And then you have to go back and also integrate with your inner child. Understand your inner child better and find ways to give it what it craves. Maybe the way for you is to be kinder to yourself. Maybe this is your highest teaching in the situation. Maybe you have to learn to be extra gentle and extra kind to yourself, as if you are being kind and kinder and extra gentle with your inner child. Especially if you put the intention of this kindness and this gentleness going directly to your inner child, you will start to see difference. I promise you that. You just have to put in the work.
Inshallah.
Thank
you.
My pleasure.
That resonates so much with me. So thank you, Hadeel, also for answering his question. It's interesting because I share the same thing, where if someone's nice to me, I'm like, wow. And then I had one person tell me, Carla, that's the bare minimum someone should be.
Thank you, Carla. You sent me the link to
Habibi.
I really needed this.
I am
Thank
glad you're with us, and I'm glad it's resonating.
Thank
Alhamdulillah.
you.
And also, if you, maybe some of you know each other on this lovely session we're having together, talk to each other about the topic. It helps so much. Do the exercises together. Play around with tapping into the inner child. Set your intention, write letters. You can pretend that one person is your inner child and have a conversation with them. You can put the inner child outside of you and kind of have a conversation, see what happens. So try it out and connect through this. Any healing journey is not easy, and it's always better to do it with friends and with support.
I do think we can send an email out later to see who wants to be buddied up and have that kind of support. I think that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, we'll do that. For those of you who shared their contact details or would like to, let us know, and we'll, I guess, send out an email with everything. Hadeel?
Yes. Well, I am so glad to be here, and I'm so happy you actually showed up. And you showing up today, by the way, is a big sign showing that you're ready to go through this journey. If you weren't ready, you will not be here today. So I encourage you to go and do something about it today, whether it's a small exercise or a big reach out or whatever it is, just do something and begin to change your life. And thank you so much for actually having me, and thank you, Carla, for having me and listening to me. And I hope these things resonate with you and have a positive influence on your life.
Hadeel, I want to say a big thank you, not just as your friend, but also for always being so up for joining these kind of discussions, like without hesitating. And I think that says a lot about you. And we've done it so much in the past. So thank you so much for the time, every time. And you give it a piece of you, which is so important. And to all of you, you have Hadeel's contacts.
By the way, if you missed the link, just go Hadeel.AlKhamis on Instagram and DM me. Just say I was with you in the session today if you have anything to ask me privately or would like to book.
Okay, all the links. So I'll share her address and her phone number and everything else. Bank account details. إيش كمان؟
No, we don't need the bank
account. Much love to all of you. Bless you all. Good luck on your journeys and mwah. See you.
Bye. See
Bye.
you.
This is the saddest part, watching everyone go.
I know.